Isn't it beautiful to have a spiritual community that has a practice together? You'll find that in any unity. We are so diverse in our expressions in unity of how each center shows up. Some centers look like you're in a Catholic church or feel like you're in a Catholic church. Some centers you might feel like you're in a Baptist church. Some centers might feel like you're in a New Age posse. Some might feel interfaith. Some might feel New Thought and Fillmorian. But what you know is the consciousness is always there, and we honor and respect the diversity of paths in which we awaken to that consciousness of unity. So it's a great gift. So happy Sunday, and we are here in our second week of this book. If you're in a small group, it's your third week, considering the orientation week. And this is the last day to sign up for a small group. Today, Sunday, you can find that information on your app or at the welcome table after the service. And if you're here for the first time, go ahead, jump in a group. It changes people's lives and people's experiences of what it is to be unity. And if you want to participate, but you don't want to make the commitment of a group for the next 7 weeks, I think, after this, then just come to one of the deep dives. We have a deep dive hosted every Sunday. So you got a hand up there? We've got a deep dive hosted every Sunday after the service, both online and in person. So some people just hop on their cell phones or their computers after and join the online one with our virtual community. And some come here and head over to the Fillmore Cafe to grab a coffee or a sandwich and connect with people that are here on grounds. So this year we are studying presence and potential. It is what some of our favorite spiritual teachers, Martha Creek is for some of us, just a beloved on the spiritual path. And she recently wrote this book and gifted a whole bunch of them to us, but we have them now for sale here if you didn't get one when she was in town, giving them as a gift. And we're studying this as a community of practice. So, we are here to deepen our practice. And this fall AIS, we call it Adventures in Spirituality, but we do it every year so that we can do the work, right? It's not just coming to a service and going, oh, that's a nice idea. But if we really want to get deep into our practice, if we really want to see changes in our lives and transformation, it takes being vulnerable and it takes churning the stuff up and noticing things. And there's nothing better than being in community and having the reflection of others and the support and the connection to be able to not only see your own stuff, but see other options on how to live life. The other way to do it is through the hard knocks of life, through falling down a lot, and through feeling isolated and alone. So why not join a small group? It's a lot gentler. These are her treasures. She says that she makes a promise with this book that we'll have a greater connection with others and a greater peace within ourselves. And this woman has said things to me that when I'm just in conversation with her and I put something into that conversation, she has such a good way of hearing spiritually that she'll stop you and go, that peace, you going to hold on to that? Because here's what that probably creates. And that's what this book is all about. This book is all about her treasures on how we can approach life in order to have suffering and disconnection, and how we can approach life to arrive with non-resistance and a feeling of the sacred and a commitment to growing world peace. So if we don't need that now, when do we need it, right? Last week was about creating clarity. It's about how we, as Eric Butterworth says, in human expression, we are human and we can be limited, but in our true expression, we are divine in creation and limitless in potentiality. So it's about getting clear on who we are, being able to stand in our truth and also connect with others. So we talked about last week the power in defining yourself in ways that allow others to stay connected to you and allow you to stay connected to others. So can we not shy away from defining ourselves? Can we not shy away from expressing ourselves? So many of us have childhood trauma or community trauma, sibling trauma, fill in the blank, that we have a whole bunch of programming that comes up when we're in interaction, right? We have a world that happens in here, But then what comes out of our mouths and sometimes on our faces is a whole nother thing. And it takes a spiritual practice to be able to stand in our authenticity and express ourselves, right? And can we express ourselves without judging, without shaming, without blaming, without making wrong? Powerful tools of doing that. She also went into how we can practice regulating our own anxiety. Anyone up for more of that? Right? Right? I've heard recently people say, like, even my mom who like doesn't give time to worry, even my mom is spending some time. She's like, I can only have this much time like doing this, but like, the worry, the temptation to worry these days. And you know that old saying, don't borrow trouble, right? Don't borrow trouble. But how do we get our psyche? How do we get our spirits? How do we get our minds to remember this practice? So that we're not actually adding to the problem. She talks about noticing our patterns and really looking at our patterns. Do you know when you fight, flight, or freeze? Do you know which one you do the most? Do you notice it within yourself? Is there a pause enough in your being and in your mind, a spaciousness enough? A lot of people think that meditation is so that nothing negative will happen in your life. That's right. I want to hear a laugh even louder. Nothing negative. That you somehow will be exempt from the human condition. Mindfulness gives something so much more powerful. A meditation practice gives something so much sweeter than that. It gives a bit of spaciousness so that between experiences, between the thoughts and the mind, you have a pause. Have you noticed that? If you have a meditation practice, that the more you're on top of your meditation practice, the more you notice the things that happen in your mind, you almost get to witness yourself as you're creating, which can sometimes be a rude awakening call, yeah? But it's also the only key to transforming our lives and community. So she talks about letting us be a circuit breaker for anxiety. Do we want to be a circuit breaker for anxiety? How about being a circuit breaker for division, being a circuit breaker for trauma, being a circuit breaker for a sense of non-belonging, being a circuit breaker for war? I was watching a video lately about being regulated, about emotional regulation, along with this idea that Martha gives us of practicing managing our own anxiety and becoming aware. And she has a little tool where she talks about pause and make space, pause and pray, or pause and create space. But Dr. Sarah Bren, on a podcast for the Parent Project, talks about how we can approach children when they're in an unregulated state, a dysregulated state, right? When they're in anxiety. Because what do we often do? I know for me, it's like, like when my daughter is whining or whatever, the getting riled up or the whatever, I like the subconscious mind or the semi-conscious mind, whatever, it's like, I'm like, that needs to stop. That needs to stop. Please stop. I'm like, no. I mean, it can, parents, grandparents, can it not be totally crazy making? Right? And then like, if you're not careful, all this not mindful stuff comes out of your mouth. And we're going to watch this little video. It's brief. But as we're watching it, I want you to think about what she says and the tools she gives to people working with children. And I want us to, at the moment we're watching it, recognize how it would be if we showed up for ourselves that way. How it would be if we showed up for other adults. Remember in the beginning of this service, I was telling the littles that they are not the age. They gave their human age, but they are not that age. Have you noticed that about adults? Have you noticed that you can be a 4-year-old? We can be a 13-year-old, right? If you don't think you can, get into a relationship. If you don't think you can do that, then have someone tell you no. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
The best way to get a child regulated is to recreate a sense of safety, deactivate the amygdala, turn that threat response off. Safety, connection. I see you. You're mad. Okay, I'm not going to add fuel to your fire. I'm not going to be gasoline for you right now. I'm not going to come in saying, what are you so mad about right now? I'm going to be really calm, which is hard to do as a parent, I know, because it's like, ah. But if I can practice my own regulation, take a deep breath, come in slow. Whoa, you're really mad. I'm not going to let you throw that thing on the floor. That's not okay. But I'm not going to scream at you and make you pick it up right now, because it's like, that's not the time. You have to get them back to this sense of safety. So co-regulation, let me share my calm nervous system with you. Let me speak to your amygdala, not your prefrontal cortex. Let me show you.
Calm nervous system with you.
Yeah, through my body language, my facial expressions, my tone of voice, my posture. We're safe. This is okay. This feeling will pass.
Deep breath in. If you know anything about NLP, you can hold a spot on your body and ground this in, or just think about it and put it in your heart. Let me share my calm nervous system with you. Let's breathe into that and say it 3 times. Let me share my calm nervous system with you. Let me share my calm nervous system with you. Let me share my calm nervous system with you. Can we remember that for ourselves? So the next time we feel unregulated, can we bring in that inner parent, that inner divine, to just take a breath and go back to that? Let me share it with you. When we see it out in the world, let me share it with you. How gracious can we be about that? There was a quote that's later that I wanted to share because it fit in there, but it'll pop in when it's there. I can't see it right now. Let me share my calm nervous system with you. So her next thing, if you were here last Sunday, we have a little bit from the chapters of last week that we're still covering. But Eckhart Tolle in the book A New Earth says, the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. Try that on. It's never the situation, but your thoughts about it. So, what is something that you're sure it's the situation? You can shout it out or just think it. Right? What is it that it's like, that is definitely the situation? Can I try on the possibility that it's my thoughts about it? I recently went to the doctor for a visit, and I have always been, not always, but in the last however many years, been told my cholesterol's on the higher side. But then I was told it was like in my genes, it's the one that's genetic or whatever. But not all doctors seem to say that, or that is even true. I don't even know what's true about that. You probably know more about cholesterol than me. But I was always surprised about that because as a primarily vegetarian since I was 19, I was like, how am I getting this cholesterol? I mean, I do love dairy, but I've cut down on it a lot. And I always thought, well, if it's in my genes, then it's my Irish self. So I kind of made friends with it, right? This is my Irish, Scottish me inside, and there's high cholesterol there. But as I went in for this last doctor's appointment with a new primary care doctor, she came back after doing the cholesterol test and said, they're both high, and you need to get on statins right now. And being the unity practitioner that I am, I just took a breath and was like, and said, I will try this the natural way. Give me 6 months. I'm going to look at my diet. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to look at my food. I'm going to look at my mind, and I'm going to see what I can do about this. And the response on the other end of the phone was, what do you think? Not get the pills and get on the medicine. Like, it was a little pushy, I have to say. A little pushy. And I was like, well, I understand, but I am going to try this. Like, I hired you, technically. And yes, it's on me if I die. And that's not what I want right now. But right now, you technically are my, employee. And I have, what do they say about the MD? Do you know that joke? I can't even remember it. I'm not good at jokes. That's why I don't do them, because they're really funny in church. But I don't do them because I give away the end. But there's like a minor deity and a major deity. An MD is a minor deity, but God is the major deity. Anyway, so I always check in with my source. And, I know probably the world is on statins. But I was like, that's not what I want. Not in alignment with that. And she was a little on the, I would say, nasty side. This isn't the doctor. I mean, she was talking to the doctor. This was the nurse who was talking to the doctor. Anyway, she says, you're going to have to get on them eventually. So you can try it, but you're going to need to get on them eventually. Now, I have a Unity minister friend, Mary Wood, who is into her 80s, and she does not take a thing. Not a thing does she take. I mean, that's not true. She takes flaxseed. She takes walks. She drinks a little beer when she wants to relax. And she takes mindfulness as her medicine. Now, I said to this woman, okay, I'm going to give it a shot, right? And then I looked everything up. I got the red rice yeast. I started taking it. And, a neighbor, I talked to a great conversation with a neighbor who I didn't even know was as cool as this neighbor was until we're having the cholesterol conversation. He's like, I got that a long time ago, and this is what I did, red rice yeast and everything, right? So we're chatting, and then I'm talking to my other resources, and like, there's more to cholesterol than people think. People don't know. There's all these other things about it, and it could be bad, could be bad. And then I go to my lady doctor, and I tell her the kind of story, right? And she goes, well, if you want to, you could get the heart scan. I'm like, tell me about this heart scan. Well, it's $50 out of pocket. Your insurance won't cover it, but they'll actually scan your heart and they'll see if you have blockages and how blocked everything is, right, from my very high cholesterol. It's not really very high. It was like on the lower end of high. So I go and I'm like, that's great. That'll help me. But in the meantime, what happens? In the meantime, I am terrified of cheese. I am terrified of eggs. I'm terrified of everything that I normally eat. And I'm like, I don't even know how to eat because everything I start to touch, I'm feeling guilty. And I'm like, everything, I'm like, I want to be around for my daughter as long as I can. Like, hey, no, cheese, pizza. No, I literally don't know what to eat anymore. And I'm feeling like all food is poison around me. And I'm going, my God, how high is it? How blocked is it? Like, and I'm using my practice too, just going, meh. But I'm like stressed out. Like literally eggs are half of what I eat. And I'm like, no, I can't do any eggs anymore. Aisha in the office is like, that's not true. Mark is like, that's not true. So I start talking to my resourceful community. Did you know that about Unity? That it is, hands down, if they tested congregations for resourcefulness, for alternative healing and nutrition and life essence, like lessons and all of that, that we would have awards. It's like everyone in Unity is a practitioner of their own. So anyway, I have a while where I'm feeling anxious and feeling, a little depressed about my future with statins, etc. And so I go get this test, and then the test results come back. They don't call me forever. And then finally, I think I called them, but maybe they called me, but I think I called them. I was like, did we get the results? Did we get the results of that test? The nurse called me back and she said, we got the results of the test and the doctor is not recommending statins at this time. And I was like, well, I know it was like a percentage of blockage. So did I get a percent? What's my score? There's a pause. So she's not recommending anything? Not statins and not anything? Well, what was my score? 0% blockage. I cried at a table in Ireland telling my family about my high cholesterol. They asked me, how are things doing? Really high cholesterol, and they want me to get on statins. Your dad was on statins, and he got off statins, and he got a little crazy, but he had to get off of them. And I'm like, Let's go back to having our dinner. Let's go back to not eating that cheese. 0% blockage. Much to do about nothing. In Martha's chapter, which could also be titled The Cholesterol Story, she talks about actually, factually, perhaps. So let me read a little for you. Our minds go off and interpret all manner of things, giving layers of meaning to what actually factually happened. We won't even see that our mind is causing the interpretation. The meaning making is causing the feelings. The thought itself is causing the feelings, keeping the event clearer, creating a distinction between what actually happened creates less pain. What factually actually happened? And then she goes on to say, period. What actually factually happened. If we don't put a period in there, then the mind will travel down a winding road. Period, 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 she said. Can you say it with me? Period. Actually, factually, period. She says there is less pain in stating the events factually. There's less feelings in the facts. There is less emotional upset, stress, suffering, worry, panic, terror. She goes on to say the mind loves to make things up. Now, I need to apply actually, factually to this doctor because in my mind, I fantasize about my reviews, which I do want to still put out there, but actually, factually. Maybe I just put it out actually, factually, right? Because there's a lot of emotion around it. And I will not be going back to that doctor. And the divine brought me a new doctor that I will be checking out that has a mindfulness that matches mine. She says, if we don't catch our stampeding herd of thoughts, we will make up an entire story. We will then believe what we've made up, and we will begin to live in relationship to what we've just made up. She goes on to say, in this practice, this new practice, we are creating and keeping a clear distinction between the feelings, the imagination, and the emotional binds, the emotional reactivity of making up something about what actually happened versus living from facts of the matter. She invites us instead to live in a way that is empowered, resourceful, creative, innovative, and thoughtful. Amen? Yeah. No need to borrow troubles, and we know that most of our worries are based on fears that never come into fruition in the first place. So are we willing to listen to our own inner dialogue and really look at it? I mean, think about the time we spend making up stories. Think if we could have that time back to use it more mindfully, or if in the future, rather than going into the past, we could put a pause in there and recognize how we want to use our time. How many conversations have you had in your lifetime about what someone meant? When they said something, when they did something, or when you heard something? Now, think about how many times a person actually goes to the source to ask what someone meant. How insane is that? Really? You hear something, and do you go to your boss to ask? Do you go to your family member to say? Or do you just make up stories and discuss it? Borrowing trouble. Statins, statins, statins. That's going to be our key word. When we hear statins, we're going to be like, I'm not going to borrow trouble. What really happens? What are the facts? A lot of times that comes up, and Martha goes into it here, a lot of times that comes up when we get a no. And when we get a no without a reason, an explanation, I'm like a big explanation giver, which leads into my type and my style a little bit. Like it's hard for me to just say no because I worry about what everyone interprets and thinks. So I do no's with like a bleeding emotional inventory. It's nothing about you. This is what's going on. But like, think about that, just giving a no. And then think about what we do with that no when we give it, right? Or when we get it. How many stories do we make up? And could we remember to put a period there? And remember what Martha Creek says, remember the mind loves to make things up. Eckhart Tolle says the past has no power over the present moment. The past has no power over the present moment. Let's say that together. The past has no power over the present moment. Let's say it with my. My past has no power over the present moment. Let's say it with our. Our past has no power over the present moment. And I say that for our nation as well. Unless, he doesn't say this, I say this, unless we give it some and remain unconscious of our mental, emotional, and spiritual patterns. Then we give it power. Then we feed it, right? I've had people who could have made assumptions about me in certain areas, but they were so filled with grace and spaciousness that something beautiful, 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 they could have been offended. They could have been offended. But instead, they had such graciousness in how they showed up that something incredible emerged. So they could have walked around with a chip on their shoulder or just walked out the door. And instead, who knows if they played the Martha Creek game? Perhaps. Perhaps it was this. Perhaps it was that. Perhaps it was this. But they didn't make a bad assumption. They didn't stick with the worst possible scenario. How often do we make the worst assumption, right? About what happened, rather than thinking, maybe I could assume the best intentions, and perhaps there's something else going on here. I heard something about relationships and marriage, and I think it applies to friendships and all relationships and everything. And it was like, in a marriage, can two people commit to assuming the best? And it was like, wow, what that would do. I mean, it's one thing to read that in a book, but in practice, a marriage of practice, a community of practice, a family of practice. What if we always stuck by the idea to assume best intentions? How huge would that be? So we can loosen up the mind, create some space by saying, perhaps, you know what I say anytime someone's crazy on the road? Perhaps they're getting ready to go to the hospital to have a baby. I say to the man driving his truck down the road. Perhaps he's on the way to the hospital. In chapters 4 through 6, she talks about the energy of non-resistance. So how do we enter a state of non-resistance? Because when we can regulate our anxiety, when we can look at the facts and deal with our emotional responses, we enter a state of peacefulness, a state of non-resistance. And she says that we can profess our own values and beliefs without attacking or judging. We do not demand or expect that others think and feel and act like we do, and we accept the differences in people. We accept the differences in people. I want to share with you a little bit from her. We'll just pop into these. In professing your own values and beliefs without attacking or judging, which is hard. I mean, maybe the attacking is not that hard, but isn't the judging kind of hard? And Scripture says, let's not do that. So that's a little sacred gift for us. So we can look at the mind and go, why? Why not? Why is this so important? Here's what Martha says. The problem is the pain that we create for ourselves when we're in a judging, attacking, coaching, counseling, mentoring state of mind is that we create pain. It's painful when we try to do the impossible. It hurts when we try to get someone to change their beliefs, their own convictions. I can't even change my own convictions, she says. It's delusional to think I can change another person's beliefs versus them waking up to a change in their own way. She goes on to say there's always going to be the temptation to keep trying to do the impossible, to keep trying to change another person or to change another person's beliefs, attitudes, judgments, dispositions, and patterns. This would be no different from trying to teach a cat to bark or trying to turn a human being into a giraffe and being frustrated as to why they are not changing. You know what's not frustrating? Looking instead at the empowerment and the possibility of me being the one that actually changes. She goes on to say, in essence, if we see another as wrong, then we're shaming them for shaming. Blaming them for blaming, judging them for judging, criticizing them for criticizing. Are we not so guilty of this in New Thought and Unity? I think this is like our growing edge. We could talk it for like ourselves, but then it's like it's like we stand so much for unity and so much for love and so much not for divisiveness that we get into divisive thoughts when people are divisive. We get into judgment when people are judgmental. We get into criticizing when people are critical. Eckhart Tolle says, whatever you think the world is withholding from you, you are withholding from the world. Whatever you think the world is withholding from you, you are withholding from the world. Do not demand or expect that others think, feel, and act like you. She says, here's the good news. If we want less stress, less anxiety, less tension, I can drop expecting, demanding, or believing that any person is going to do something the way I do it, or the way I thought it ought to be done. This is how we take back the power we have. She goes on to say, taking back your power leaves you more responsive and less reactive. It leaves you more thoughtful and puts you in the mindset of being a student. Can you begin to ask yourself, can I learn from them as well? Can I learn from everything, from anything? Everything that's in front of me. It's the divine curriculum. She doesn't say that. That was an addition. It requires an open mind to be willing to learn anything, a willingness to accept differences between people, as we'll see in the next chapter, which is accepting differences between people. Now, has anyone run into someone who knows everything about whatever it is they know? Like, it doesn't have to be everything about everything. But when you are in the midst of them, if you try to share a thought or a concern or anything like that, it's like they're the expert. Oh, little one. Oh, little one. I mean, I don't want to be all woman, men thing, but like for sure there's no woman that has not experienced that. Love, love, love. And probably there's no man that has experienced that. Is that right? Yeah. Where someone's like, I know. Yeah. Human experience that? She says it's delusional and problematic. Let's not be delusional anymore. It's delusional and problematic because when our natural differences arise, we become opposed to them or affronted by them or afraid of them. We begin judging and attacking and demanding we all be the same until we accept differences in ourselves, in the people closest to us, those we work with, live with, associate with, attend church with, people living in the same country as us, or doing our same job. We judge and attack. Until we learn to accept our differences, we are subject to and hostage to those differences. She says, what are the consequences to you of not accepting that we have differences? What does denying differences cause in your own life? We know what thinking we don't have differences causes. A sense, illusionary sense, but a sense of wholeness, a sense of togetherness, right? A sense of unity, a sense of belonging. So what's the cost of not having a sense of belonging, not having unity, not having that? It's, right? It's war. It's war against the present moment. It's war against the self. It's war against the other. It's the lack of belonging which creates all these emotions that can lead to suicide, addiction, fill in the blank. She says, accepting differences in other people absolutely requires me to grow myself up and allow the full spectrum of human beings to be human beings and to quickly and powerfully awaken to our differences in all cases. She makes this case. Over time, regardless of how similar we are or how close we are, or if we were raised in the same house or in the same family or in the same profession, there are absolutely differences between each of us and every other person on the planet. And that is nothing to be upset about. The Buddha says, your work is to discover your world, and then with all your heart, give yourself to it. So if we want a world of unity, then we discover that in all things, and then we give it. Charles Fillmore said, your mission is to express the Creator's attributes. Namaste.